Miss McDonald here. So let's talk about fractions today. In this video, we're going to go through the main vocabulary words that you're going to need to know with fractions. So hopefully you have your notebook out because I'm going to write on the whiteboard and you need to take notes because the words that we're going to talk about in this video are going to be used through the rest of the lessons on fractions. So you're going to need to know them. So we're going to start basic. So every single time that we talk about fractions, every fraction is a piece of something else. So you guys know fractions. You've eaten pizza before. Every slice of that piece of pizza, it represents a fraction because it's a piece of the bigger pie or tray, depending on where you're from. If you have a bowl of cookies that your mom just made and you eat 4 of them, let's say she made 20 cookies, you just ate 4 out of 20 cookies. So you can look at all of this kind of stuff as a fraction. When we look at it in a math book, we always have a number on top of another one. So we have our top number, and we have our bottom number. And then there's always this line that's drawn between them. So these have names, and these are going to be important to know. So the top name is called a numerator. And the bottom is called a denominator. And I just started to spell it wrong. Sorry, I'm not perfect. You don't have to be either. So we always have a numerator and we have a denominator. So remember we were talking about that pizza? So if we talked about that pizza, and that pizza had 8 slices, and you were really hungry, and you ate 3 of them, then what that turns into is you actually ate 3/8 of the pizza. So this is the piece of what you ate, and this is how many slices were in the entire pizza. So the number on the bottom is always going to end in and it's going to be weird to say, or it's going to end in seconds or something like that. So in this case, we would read this as 3/8. Yes, I know I'm stressing the a lot, and I hope you're laughing at the face that I'm making, because it's a weird one. Okay, so the numerator and the denominator. We have some rules that we have to follow when we talk about the numerator and the denominator. So, we always want the numerator to be smaller than the denominator. I'm just going to slide this over so you can see it a little better. So rule number 1, we want the numerator smaller than the denominator. So that's one of our main rules when it comes to fractions. Sorry, I don't want my head in the way. We want to make sure that that top number is smaller than the bottom number. So if we go back to that pizza that we were talking about, and you ate 3 slices out of 8 slices, so we have this number on the top, that's smaller, and the number on the bottom is bigger. So that's mainly one of our biggest rules. Our other rule with fractions is that we always want to make sure the fraction is as small as it can possibly be. Now, depending on what book you're looking at, or depending on what problems you may have seen before and the directions, this is called a couple different things. So this is known as reducing. Is my blue showing up? Not really. We'll keep it black, I guess. So this is known as reducing a fraction, and we'll talk about how to do that. It's also known as simplifying. Or it's also called lowest terms. So you may have seen instructions that say put the fraction in its lowest terms. That's what it's talking about. So all three of these words mean the same thing. Why somebody had to create 3 words that all mean the same exact thing is beyond me, but it certainly makes it more confusing for you now, doesn't it? Okay, so these are our main rules. In future videos that are coming up, we're going to talk about how to reduce fractions and how to play around with fractions. The next thing, though, is when we're talking about terms that you need to know when it comes to fractions, is there are 2 different types. Well, really, there's 3 types. So our first type of fraction doesn't really have a name because it's what we want it to be. Our first type of fraction is, we'll call it a proper fraction. That's just my word, that's not a book word. So we have our proper fraction, where the top is smaller than the bottom. So this is exactly what we want to have happen. We want the top number smaller than the bottom number. So the numerator is smaller than the denominator. And again, remember, this is just my word. This isn't a book word. Now, the second type is a book word that if you ever open a math book or anything like that, you're going to see this term when it comes to fractions. Our second type is called an improper fraction. So, if I called a proper fraction when the top number is smaller than the bottom number, what do you think an improper fraction would be? Yes, I know, you can't answer me, but I'm giving you a chance to think about it. So improper, this word, it means the opposite of proper. So it's going to be the same thing with our fraction. When we have an improper fraction, we end up with the top, or the numerator, being the bigger number, and the bottom being smaller. We don't want that to happen. In future videos, we're going to talk about what happens if we end up with an improper fraction. So we cannot leave it this way. So we don't want this. This will never be our answer to a problem. So think about if you are playing with Legos and at the bottom you have Legos stacked one on top of each other. So your bottom is pretty small. You don't have the big base down at the bottom. And then all of a sudden at the top, you start really you put tons and tons of Legos on top of that. What's going to happen? It's going to fall over. So if you have all of this weight at the top of something, it's going to topple over because it's not right. So with an improper fraction, it's not right for us to have the numerator be bigger than the denominator. So again, when we get to future videos, we're going to talk about how to work with these. Our final kind of fraction is called a mixed fraction. So a mixed fraction, this is when we have a whole number and a fraction together. So you've probably heard of these. So let's go back to the cookies. You definitely ate the first cookie, and then you thought you wanted another cookie, but you weren't hungry enough to finish the whole thing, so you only ate half of it. So you ate 1½ cookies. That's a mixed fraction. So it would look like this. So you have 1, that shows the whole entire cookie that you ate, and then you ate a half of another cookie. So a mixed fraction is going to be the whole number and a regular fraction, or a proper fraction, put together. Okay? So these are the three main types of fractions that we're going to be working with. Now, in future videos, we're going to be talking about, especially with improper fractions, the way to fix them and make them not improper anymore is we have to change them into mixed fractions. We'll get into that, don't worry. And then sometimes if you have to multiply or divide or add fractions, so when you have to play around with fractions, if they start as a mixed fraction, we have to turn them into an improper fraction to be able to work out the problem. So those are going to be the things that are coming up in our next videos. So these are just the basic terms that you needed to know, and these are going to be incorporated in all of the other work that we're going to be doing. Okay? I hope this wasn't too much and that you learned something and you're able to read everything that I have on the board. And I am sure that you enjoy the fact that you can pause me and stop me and you don't have to sit here and listen to my lecture in person. But I wish I was there with you. So I will see you in the next video. Bye.